Hi, I'd like to introduce my approach to drum sequencing with the Droid eurorack system that you see here. And this patch is motivated by these great abilities to tweak and modify patterns with the algoquencer circuits. But when you use them for drum pattern design, then you quickly realize that if you use the internal random sequences, then they do not, of course, distinguish between whether you design a kick or a snare or a hat. So that you have typically adjust them manually, that everything fits together. On the other hand, there are plenty modules around that do distinguish between the different drum voices, and unfortunately most of them do not feature this great functionality to modify the patterns like the algoquencers can do. So my idea was just to combine these two, and this is what I have done here in a patch. The main idea is that the Droid system is listening to external sequences and copies them to algoquencers, where then you can apply all the nice modulations. So what you need at the minimum is the Droid master system, and two P2B8s and one P10. For demonstration here, I also use the G8 expander and the X7 to send out the signals via MIDI. So I may just start a sequence here. And so first of all, here is the noise engineering numeric repetitor that I use as a source to generate trigger patterns, and this module here sends out 4 voices, which I guide into the Droid system. And here you see at the LEDs, the blue ones are just the 4 voices that are getting in. I have patched the first one to the kick of the TR-08 Holland boutique, and the second one is the snare, heads, and the clap. And to the right you see the outgoing signal, which, as I have not do any settings here, is just the same as the incoming signal. So how it is organized here: the top buttons are global buttons. This is the global activity, the variations depth, the fills depth, the rolls depth, the offbeat parameter, and the distribution parameter. These here let you choose different menus, and the right ones can make settings to each of the 4 channels, as well as those tiny pots here of the P10. And so since you don't have to get immediate access to all of the individual steps of your patterns, because you guide in already some patterns that sound like drum patterns, you don't need a large system and can condense everything into this mini system here. So here the left column here of pots is the activity parameter for each of the 4 voices. So we can, for example, now increase the snare. Then this is the heads. Also put some in here, and maybe also the clap. Then the right column here are split pots. The left half is the déjà vu parameter, the right side is the morph parameter. So we can maybe add some déjà vu to those activities to get a little bit of variation. We are still listening to the same standard sequence that we are importing here, and just apply some modulations. Then we can do a global adjustment activity that is just linearly added to the settings that are done here to make it more busy, or to reduce it. Then we can here use the offbeats that tell you whether the random decisions that are made are either preferred on the downbeats, which is the odd numbers 1, 3, 5 and so on, or whether you prefer the offbeats to get more complex structures, which are the even beat numbers. I usually leave it somewhere around here. And then take the distribution parameter, so if we crank to the left, then the random decisions prefer the first half of every bar. This, by the way, is a bar LED that counts through 4 bar cycles. So now we have the distribution parameter to prefer the first half of every bar, or about the second half. I usually leave this somewhere in between. Then we can go through the menu quickly. The first menu here is the mute menu that allows you here to mute individual channels or dial them in again, or use the unmute button to the right that unmutes the channels at the beginning of the next bar. You also noticed here, if I mute all channels, then we have here a global mute button that can do the same, and this listens also whether you unmute or mute all channels manually, then this is reflected by the global mute button as well. Then this button here has also a special function, a clear function. If you do a long press, then the algoquences are cleared and start listening to your sequence again, as well as they re-roll all the random seeds of your sequences. That can be helpful, as if you implement the patch for the first time, I think the algoquences, they load themselves a random sequence, and that can cause conflicts between the sequence that you are listening to. But you typically have to do this only once when you implement the patch, and then after that the internal state is saved to the memory. So if you then reboot your system, everything is up running again. Yes, this global mute button is also available when you are in other menus than the menu 1. So this is always available. You just can't see which channels you are muted. Yeah, then let's go to the second menu. Here you can re-roll each channels, either the random seeds of the trigger patterns here, or the random seeds of the access output, because each channel has one trigger output and one access output. So I will show you this later maybe, or maybe I can make if we listen now for just the snare and the kick, and we go to the seeds menu. If we reseed the trigger for the snare, the random decisions are newly diced and made every time I press the button. A new random seed is spread out. Then the next menu here is the length of the pattern. So I can shorten, the standard length is 16 steps, and if you're at 16 steps, the right buttons are lit up, then, and these buttons act as a plus and minus, so we can shorten the length of the clap pattern, for example, by pressing here to the left. So we are now at 15 steps, another one at 14 steps, and as soon as we leave the 16 step length, the LED here is blinking, indicating you that you do something non-standard here. So you can see here that we are no longer following the blue original pattern, but have a shorter length that allows you to do polyrhythms. As long as the right buttons are lit, you can modify your pattern length from a length between 16 and 9 steps, So you can go down here to a minimum length of 9, and then it will flip over again to 16. And also if you are at 16 and press plus, then you flip over to 9. So, but you can also reduce your step length to a pattern length of 1 to 8 steps. This is when you do a long press to the left side. Then you know you are you can modify the pattern length between 1 and 8 steps. And this is lit, it means that you are at 8 steps. So if you reduce it to 7 steps, as long as you are deviating from 8, then the LED will blink. And you can return to any pattern length that you like by just, no, not only by a long press. You always decide between 8 or 16 steps, and then you can start deviating from there. We follow the same logic here in the next menu, but this time we apply it to the accent level. So for example, we for now just listen to the kick. I have wired the accent output to the decay of the kick, and if we now go to the accent level and increase the spread, so that means here now it means we are at maximum accent level, so that actually there is no difference between accent and non-accents. Then if we reduce it, you can hear some modulation there. If we don't like this pattern, we can do a reseed. So that's actually not too bad. Then the snare I have wired to the snappy parameter of the snare. So here I can go to the full and again I could reseed this. Then the head I wired the accent to the decay length also to get some open and closed hi-hats. Nice, and the clap I have wired to the traditional velocity, so that's a normal accent. We can't hear it. Yeah, why not? Okay, the next menu is the fills and roll menu. Here we can decide whether the individual channels here contribute or are affected by the fills command. This is the left row owned by the rolls. So we can, for example, allow these, the kick, the snare and the heads to be affected by the fills command as soon as we crank it up. This is the depth parameter. We introduce fills, and the right here is maybe we add some rolls to the snare. This is the rolls depth. Where are they? Huh? Oh. Then the next menu is the variation parameter, where the first lane here tells you again also which channel should be affected by the variations parameter and which not. So I can maybe allow the clap to become varied. I have to crank up the depth of the variation parameter. So this now allows the variations to deviate from the original sequence without changing the total number of beats, so they are maintained, but they appear in different positions. And the right one is a 4 states button that has 4 parameters that allows you, or factors that are multiplied to this global variation depth, so that allows you to attenuate a bit. So because if maybe I like also to have the kick, you have some variations, but maybe not to the same depth than the clap, so I can attenuate this. And it's 4 stages, so it's divided. The full lid means a factor of 1, so just this one. Then the next press of the button is a factor of 0.75, then 0.5 and 0.25, so it's attenuated by a quarter each time you press the button. And then finally the last menu here, as this was the global mute button, tells you or allows you to set the fills order, which is set to 3 here. Here is 0, which means a fill is put at every bar. Fills order 1 means every second bar. Fills order 2 and fills order 3. I like 3 the best. And that will write the branches parameter finally, that is similar to the fills parameter, but rather than it does variations itself, it just alternates the random seed in a rhythmic way. So if you increase this, then every second bar a new random seed is chosen. Of course, then it alternates back and forth between just these 2 states, and you can also make this more complex by chaining up different random sequences. For this pattern here, maybe it's too much of variation. I switch this off, and that is essentially what we can do here. Maybe to mention, if I change the original pattern here to something else, then the Algoquensis just automatically listens to those changes and make it up to date within the next bar, so within the next 16 steps. I've changed it now again. You can hear a different basic beat. Maybe I switch to menu 1, where you can see the bars moving, and then I can change the basic beat back. Yeah, that's it. It requires about, or it uses about 60% of the RAM size, so you can theoretically extend it by 2 more voices, at least I would say. If you have more equipment, that would be straightforward. In any way, this is a patch where you can nicely pimp up your otherwise static drum patterns that you have used somewhere else, and or if you don't like to do manual drum design like I do. Yeah, so then enjoy and use it.